Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually I come to these sessions with a coffee in hand, ready to jump into some tech news or a business case study.
Something a bit lighter.
Yeah, exactly. Something where we can dissect a strategy and find a cool takeaway. But today, the stack you've brought is different. It is heavy.
Hmm.
I was reading through this over the weekend, and honestly, it forces you to just stop and stare at the wall for a minute.
It is not an easy read. I'll be the first to admit that. It's dense, it's dark, and it deals with human suffering on a scale that is, frankly, hard to conceptualize.
We are looking at the Shia Rights Watch monthly report, and this covers just 1 month from January 1st to February 1st, 2026.
Just 31 days.
And the mission today is tricky because we are trying to find the signal in the noise. We aren't just talking about conflict in a general sense or, the usual geopolitical chess moves.
Right.
We are looking for a specific pattern of persecution targeting Shia Muslims globally.
Right. And pattern is the key word there.
Hmm.
It's so easy to see these as isolated incidents, a bomb here, an arrest there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you lay them all out on the table, as this report does, you see a systemic effort.
Mm-hmm.
And before we even touch the map, we have to talk about how this report was built.
Okay.
Because there is a disclaimer in the methodology section that actually gave me chills.
I circled that too. It was right at the top. They explicitly state they relied on their own sources and human rights groups, but they didn't publish violations where they didn't have 100% conclusive evidence.
Exactly. Think about what that means practically. In a conflict zone, in places like Syria or Afghanistan or, enclosed societies like we see in the Gulf,
Getting evidence is almost impossible.
it's nearly impossible. You have internet blackouts, fear of retaliation, suppression of media. So what we're about to discuss,
Yeah.
as bad as it is,
It's the floor, not the ceiling.
precisely.
Yeah.
I call it the iceberg theory of human rights reporting. What we have in these pages is just the tip of the iceberg that was visible enough to be verified. The vast majority of the suffering likely remains underwater, unseen.
That is a sobering place to start, but I think it's important context. If this is the verified list, the reality is much, much starker.
It have to be.
Okay, let's unpack this geographically. The report covers a pretty wide arc: Central Asia, the Gulf, and the Levant. I want to start in Central and South Asia, specifically Afghanistan.
A region where the situation has been deteriorating for a long time, and January 2026 showed us that, that deterioration is accelerating.
What struck me about the Afghanistan section is that you have this dual threat. It feels like the community is being squeezed from two sides.
That's a good way to put it.
On one hand, you have just raw physical violence. On January 1st, right at the start of the year, literally New Year's Day, a young man named Mohammed Shah Amiri was killed by an armed group in Badashan.
And that just sets the tone for the month. But look at the incident on January 7th in Ghazni. 3 young men abducted, tortured to death.
And their bodies dumped on the street. That's what I wanted to ask you about. Why dump the bodies? Why not just hide the crime?
Because the crime isn't just the killing. The crime is the message.
I see.
Dumping bodies in a public space is a tactic of terror. It's designed to tell the local community, we can touch you, we can hurt you, and there is nothing you can do about it. It's about creating a psychological environment of total vulnerability.
And that pattern of public violence just continued with the bombings. The report lists a bus bombing in Balkh on the 15th, another bus targeted in Kabul on the 20th.
With a restaurant bombing in Kabul the very next day.
And look at the targets.
Exactly. Buses, restaurants, these are soft targets. These aren't military installations or police stations.
No.
These are places where people are just trying to live their lives, go to work, get a meal. By targeting these spaces, the attackers are trying to eliminate the concept of a safe daily life.
But here's where it gets really interesting, or maybe disturbing is the better word. It's not just about bombs and bullets. You turn the page to January 24th in Bamiyan province, and you see something that looks, on the surface, like a bureaucratic rule change.
The ban on teaching Jafari jurisprudence.
Yeah, that's Shia religious law banned in schools.
This is a critical pivot point in our analysis.
Yeah.
We talk about physical violence, which destroys the body, but this is identity erasure.
For a listener who might not know, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this too, what does that actually mean for a kid in Bamiyan, like practically speaking?
It means that when you walk into a classroom, your history, your legal traditions, your religious identity are, they're legally non-existent.
So it's not just that they're not teaching it.
No, it is the state saying the way you and your family understand the world is invalid. You are forcing students to study a curriculum that contradicts their own beliefs.
It's a software update for society, a forced reprogramming of the next generation.
That's a very good way to put it. Physical violence kills the person today, but banning the jurisprudence in the curriculum, that kills the community tomorrow.
Right.
It ensures the next generation doesn't know who they are.
And speaking of controlling the population, we can't ignore the entry from January 11th. The Vice and Virtue forces carried out an arrest campaign in the Dashti-Barchi area of Kabul.
Specifically targeting women and young girls.
Yeah.
This is where we see the intersection of different types of persecution. Dashti-Barchi is a predominantly Shia neighborhood. So when you see Vice and Virtue forces arresting women there, usually under the guise of improper hijab or not having a male guardian.
It's a double layer.
It's a double layer of oppression. It's gender persecution, yes, but it's weaponized against a specific religious minority to exert total social control.
Let's move across the border to Pakistan. If the theme in Afghanistan is this mix of violence and erasure, the theme in Pakistan seems to be attacking the social fabric itself.
Absolutely. The most devastating incident in this report for Pakistan occurred on January 25th in Dera Ismail Khan.
The bombing at a wedding ceremony.
A wedding.
A wedding? It hits differently. You're supposed to be celebrating a new beginning, a union, and instead you have over 7 people killed and 25 injured, including women and children.
It does hit differently, and that is by design. Strategically, attacking a wedding is about destroying the community's ability to experience joy.
It feels incredibly cruel.
It is cruel, but it's also calculated. If you attack a political rally, that's one thing. But if you attack a wedding, you are telling that community that there is no sanctuary. There is no moment, no matter how personal or sacred, where you can let your guard down. It tears at the bonds that hold a minority community together. If you can't gather to celebrate, do you really have a community left?
And that mass violence was coupled with targeted assassinations. On January 18th, a man named Mohsen Ali was assassinated in the same city, Dera Ismail Khan.
Right. And then the next day, a security officer, Musaddiq Ali, was killed in Kohat.
It's a pincer movement of fear.
That's it. Think about the psychology of living there. You aren't safe in a crowd at a wedding because of the bombs, and you aren't safe as an individual walking down the street because of the assassins.
It's suffocating.
It's a constant suffocating pressure that forces people to withdraw from public life.
I want to shift gears now and move to the Gulf. We're looking at Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and the tone of the report, it shifts here. We aren't reading about non-state actors with suicide vests.
No. We're reading about state-sanctioned silence.
Silence is the operative word. In Bahrain, we are seeing a war on worship that is incredibly bureaucratic, incredibly consistent, and honestly exhausting just to read about.
The consistency is what blew my mind.
Yes. The report tracks the ban on unified Shia Friday prayers at the Imam al-Sadiq Mosque in Daraz. It doesn't just say they banned prayers, it lists the weeks.
The 61st consecutive week on January 2nd.
Then the 62nd, 63rd, 64th, all the way to the 65th consecutive week on January 30th.
65 weeks. That is well over a year. Imagine that.
A year.
Every single Friday for over a year, being told, no, you cannot gather here to pray. It's a slow grinding down of religious freedom. It's designed to demoralize.
It turns worship into a confrontation.
Into a weekly confrontation with the state, exactly.
And it's not just religious. On January 2nd, the report notes the siege of political activist Hassan Mushima's home in Jidhafs. And they arrested citizens just for standing in solidarity with him.
It shows that the crackdown is comprehensive. You have the religious restriction at the mosque, and you have the political restriction at the activist's home. And then look at January 11th in Isa Town.
Right, the arrests of protesters demanding jobs at the Ministry of Labor.
Exactly. So you have a clampdown on prayer, a clampdown on political activism, and a clampdown on economic protests.
It touches every part of life.
Every aspect. You can't pray, you can't speak, and you can't ask for work.
Then we have Saudi Arabia. There's only one entry for Saudi Arabia in this month's report, but it's a heavy one.
Very heavy.
January 15th. The death of a political detainee named Mohammed Abdul Rab al-Rasul al-Ayu.
This is a case that illustrates what human rights researchers call slow violence. He didn't die from an execution squad. He didn't die from a beating.
The report says human rights sources attribute his death to deliberate medical neglect and denial of care inside the prison.
Which is a polite way of saying they let him die.
It's chilling because it's so passive.
It's a passive-aggressive. Prisons in these contexts are often used as tools of attrition. If you deny medical care to a political prisoner who has a chronic condition or an acute illness, you don't have to face the international backlash of executing them.
You just let nature take its course.
Accelerated by your negligence. It gives the state plausible deniability. Oh, he died of natural causes while achieving the exact same result. The elimination of a dissident.
That is, yeah. It's a terrifying loophole in how we think about violence. Okay, let's move to the Levant. We need to talk about Lebanon and Syria. And obviously the context here is just dominated by chaos and war.
Lebanon, in particular, saw a massive spike in violations in January 2026. The report ties this directly to the cross-border conflict. But as always, we have to look at who is actually paying the price.
It's the civilians. It's always the civilians. On January 5th, the report describes hundreds of families fleeing border towns like Mays, Al-Jabal, and Qiyam, heading toward Tyre because of shelling. Just mass displacement.
And notice the specific weaponry described in the report. This isn't just conventional artillery. On January 12th, there's a report of phosphorus shells being used on agricultural lands in al-Shab.
Phosphorus. Okay, I know that's bad, but explain why that specific detail matters here.
Well, white phosphorus is horrific. It burns at an incredibly high temperature, it's difficult to extinguish, and it sticks to skin. But when used on agricultural land,
It poisons the soil.
it poisons the soil, destroys the crops. So you aren't just hurting people today, you are destroying the livelihood of those farmers for years to come. It's an attack on the land itself.
And then you have the psychological warfare. On January 10th, the report cites sonic booms causing panic in Nabatea and Tyre.
This connects back to what we said about the body dumping. Sonic booms are terror without a physical mark. It creates panic, it breaks windows, it traumatizes children. It's a reminder from the sky that you are not safe at any moment.
But sadly, there were plenty of physical marks too. The list of victims is long, and I think it's important we don't just breeze past them as numbers.
I agree. We have to remember these are human beings.
There was Farmer Mohammed Hussein, killed on January 30th, Fatima Hamza, killed in Farmelki on January 26th, journalist Mohammed Farhat, injured while just doing his job.
People whose lives were ended or upended in an instant. And for every name on that list, there are families, friends, and communities left grieving.
And then we get to Syria.
Syria.
I have to say, looking at the stack, Syria has the highest volume of incidents for January. It feels like a landscape of total lawlessness.
It does feel that way. But if we look closely, we can categorize the chaos. It's not random, it's structured chaos.
Yeah. Okay, let's try to organize this. The first category I saw was kidnapping and extortion. It seems like being Shia in certain parts of Syria just makes you a walking dollar sign.
Tragically, yes. Look at the case of Latham Shamana on January 1st. He was trying to travel to Lebanon.
Probably to escape this exact situation.
Exactly. He was abducted, tortured, severe torture, the report says, and only released for a ransom.
And it's not just travelers. On January 26th, there was a sweep of arrests of businessmen in Al Marusa. The charge, fabricated. The goal, extortion.
And on the 29th, they were using security screenings at Sayyida Zainab, a holy shrine, to extort visitors.
So it's a predatory economy.
A predatory economy built on targeting this community. You have armed groups essentially farming the population for cash.
But I have to stop you on the Syria section, though, because amidst all the kidnapping and the shelling, there was this other category of violence that I just didn't expect. It wasn't gunmen. It was professional associations.
You're looking at the entry for January 7th, the Tartus Bar Association.
40 lawyers struck from the registry in a single day. Why? Because they were representing detainees.
It sounds like a boring bureaucratic move, doesn't it? Oh, they lost their license.
Yeah.
But think about the mechanics of a purge like that.
Yeah.
If you are a Shia detainee in a Syrian prison, which, let's be clear, is already a nightmare scenario, your one lifeline is a lawyer who is willing to speak for you.
And the state just severed that lifeline for everyone at once?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
By disbarring 40 lawyers, they didn't just punish the lawyers. They guarantee that hundreds, maybe thousands of detainees now have zero legal representation.
That creates a black hole.
A black hole in the justice system. It sends a message to any other lawyer. Defend these people and you lose your career.
And it didn't stop at the courts. We saw the exact same playbook at Masayev Hospital on January 24th.
Over 100 doctors and nurses dismissed.
This is what I'm struggling to wrap my head around. If you fire the doctors, who treats the wounded?
Nobody. And that's the point. It is a war of attrition. If you purge the legal defense, you destroy justice. If you purge the medical care, you destroy survival. You make the environment so hostile, so unlivable socially, legally, medically, that the community either flees or collapses.
It is a systematic dismantling of the community's ability to survive.
It is
Yeah.
devastatingly effective.
And then on top of that institutional violence, you still have the brutality, the public spectacle of it.
You're referring to the public torture.
Yes. January 16th in Hama and January 17th in the Al Ghab Plain. The report specifically says public torture. They want people to see it. And then the summary executions. Specifically, the former officer, Mohammed Yusuf al-Basamra, killed right in front of his family on January 7th.
It's performative violence. We saw this with the body dumping in Afghanistan. It's designed to traumatize the witnesses, the family, the neighbors as much as the victim. It leaves a scar on the collective memory of the town.
And finally, for Syria, there's the attacks on what should be safe spaces. We already mentioned the hospital purges, but on January 9th, there was an actual attack on Al-Kindi hospital staff in Homs. 4 people killed,
including a woman named Leal Salem. And on that same day, January 9th, the shelling of the Sheikh Massoud area in Aleppo. This one was just heartbreaking. It wiped out the Rasho family.
The grandfather, Amin, his daughter, Zainab, his daughter-in-law, and 3 children.
3 generations.
3 generations gone in a single strike.
It highlights that in these zones, there is no rearguard. There is no safe home.
It's overwhelming when you lay it all out like that, from the schools in Afghanistan to the weddings in Pakistan, the mosques in Bahrain, and the hospitals in Syria. It's a lot to process.
It is. But if we try to synthesize this, if we ask, so what does this all mean? The answer is clear. The Shia Rights Watch report for January 2026 shows us that these violations aren't just about physical death.
Right. It's about making life unlivable.
Exactly. It's a multi-front war. If you fire the doctors and lawyers, you destroy the economic and legal safety net.
Okay.
If you ban the prayers in the school curriculum, you destroy the culture and the future. If you use sonic booms and public torture, you destroy the peace of mind.
It's a total siege on existence.
It is.
Yes.
And I want to go back to something we touched on at the very beginning.
The iceberg.
The iceberg. We just spent all this time detailing horrific violence massacres, torture, systemic purging. And yet, because of that strict methodology,
because they only published what they could verify,
we're likely missing half the story. Maybe more.
That's the thought I can't shake. If this is the version of January 2026 that made it past the censors, past the internet blackouts, and past the fear of retaliation, what happened in the dark?
That is the question the report leaves us with. And it's why reports like this are so vital, even if they are painful to read. We have to witness what we can and acknowledge that the reality is likely much worse.
A heavy deep dive today, but a necessary one. We need to understand these patterns to understand the world. Thanks for walking us through it.
Anytime. It's important work.
And to our listeners, thanks for sticking with us through a tough topic. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking questions about what lies beneath the surface. We'll see you on the next deep dive.